Now we're going to be adding the UI element to our wrist, which is going to be the view for our climbing stamina. We're going to do that by starting a brand new script, but before we do that, let's add a couple events for the climbing stamina controller. On our climbing stamina controller, we are going to add 2 Unity events. So these will be public Unity events, and they're going to be called grab started, and not grab ended. Why doesn't JetBrains like that? It wants it. I don't like that. I like my Unity events capitalized. And our grab started, of course, is going to be just an event that gets called when we start grabbing. And that's probably going to be right here. Grab started dot invoke. And same thing, except for when we release the object, that is when grab stopping is going to occur, or grab ended. Now, this script is pretty much done and it's ready to be subscribed to, so we can add the view. So let's go ahead and find our controllers, the direct interactors right here. And we are going to add a component, climbing stamina view. We'll drag this over there in the scripts. Oh, but we have a problem. We don't have a view at the moment, so maybe we should create the view first. So this utility script is going to be an object duplication script. And this is in the utility folder because this is a script that you can use for all of your future projects that you just keep adding on to so you can create and duplicate objects. It sounds really simple, but you'll see. Over time, this script can get very big with a lot of unique types of duplication, and we're going to create our first one today. But first, let's see what we want to create. I don't like these gizmos. Let's shrink them down to nothing and go over to our direct interactor. Let's turn off the left one. So this view I want, in my eyes, is going to look tiny like this, but not negative. And it's going to be flat, and kind of like this. Perfect, maybe. So the cube looks kind of crooked, but if we click play, we can see that it's not crooked, and we can line up where we want our view to actually be. So I was thinking of a view that kind of starts right here, is rotated, and then they're just going to be duplicated and rotated a little bit, and they're just going to come around the wrist on both sides. So we'll delete this one, and we will create another transform, which will be where the root of this is. And the cube will be the child of that. I'm totally messing this up, but we'll make it work, I promise. And we'll slide this up. Rotate a little bit. And so basically we're going to want to duplicate this over and over, but we don't want to. We could do it by hand, but we're not going to. Something like that. And it's going to go around the wrist on both sides. Let's go ahead and copy this transform because that's going to be the root of where we start our duplication. And let's repeat that process. Create an empty transform and paste in those values. All right, let's see where we are. That's not exactly what I had in mind. So in this script, we're going to need to decide what object we're duplicating. So we need a reference to this cube, the object we're duplicating. Then we're going to need a number. How many times are we duplicating it? Where are we starting it? How much are we moving it in? How much are we rotating it? And Hopefully that wasn't complicated. It'll make perfect sense as we go by. Serialized field, we'll do that later. Let's just make it public. Private game object. What do we want to call this? Let's game object prefab. Doesn't need to be a prefab. Can be anything. Then we will have the public int number of duplications. We'll give a default value of 10. Then the public. Then we want a public vector 3, feet 3, movement amount, rotation amount. That's pretty much it. All right, let's make the first method. So the method we are going to create is, let's first fix this, is we are going to take this cube. It's going to be instantiated right there. Then we are going to, when we instantiate this cube, it's going to be zeroed out on the position and the rotation. And then we are going to rotate it and then translate it, which means pushing it along its local axis. And then we're going to do that over and over and over. Public void rotate and then translate. And I'm naming this again very specifically because over time you might have 10 different methods that do very similar but very different things. All right, to get this method started, we are going to instantiate the game object prefab and then assign its position and rotation to the script, because we are going to also child it to this script. Transform position and transform rotation. All right, so now we need to rotate the object. And first we need to give this a variable name. New game object equals new game object. All right, let's fix this. It's going to drive me crazy, this O. Because we need to camel case everything. Because we are not monsters. New game object dot transform dot rotate. We're going to do rotation amount dot x. Let's do rotation amount dot y and rotation amount dot z. This is not exactly what we're going to do, but it's just getting us started. Now we are going to do almost the same thing except for translate. And we're just going to do movement amount. We don't need any of this. And this is separated because this is going to go in a for loop. But first, let's try this. And how do we go about trying this? We're going to need to install this wonderful plugin. If I don't have it already, it's called Naughty Attributes. A really weird name. I remember when I first installed it at my job, my project lead a long time ago was a little suspicious of why would I be downloading something called Naughty Attributes. But if you haven't used Naughty Attributes, it's an amazing product and it's free, especially if you can't afford Odin. It's just on the asset store, Naughty Attributes right there. Let's import this. And what this Naughty Attribute is going to do is just, the main thing that I use it for is just the button attribute. We can just do this, button. Boom. That's it. It's the most magical, powerful thing that I don't understand why Unity doesn't have by default. Now, let's say we go in the script and we add this object duplication and we click, wait. We drop that in there and it's going to duplicate that 10 times or 0 times because it's not in a for loop. But there you go. Now we can test our code in the editor without having to press play and call this method somehow. It makes life so much easier. All right, so now we need this in a for loop. That was beautiful. For loop. Grab all this, toss it in there. And so on this rotation amount, we want the first one to rotate basically just this. But every single time it rotates, we want to just multiply the rotation amount by the number of duplications every single time. That way, when it rotates, the first one's going to rotate like 10 degrees. Wrong way. Let's go 10 degrees. No. 10 degrees. And then the second one is going to rotate 20 degrees. The next one 30 degrees and so forth. That way they are moving out in a beautiful little circle. And to do that, since I is starting at 0, we are going to multiply this times I plus 1 because we don't want to multiply it 0 times 0. And we will just duplicate that and add it to all of these. And then, of course, I forgot a parentheses. I am just making a huge mess here. Sweet. And I think that's it. Let's see if it works. And I really would like to child that. But first, let's see, we want to rotate, I think, on Z and move it out. Why are we moving this out? Let's put it on the cube on local on the Y-axis. Well, let's see, how much do we need to move it out? Oh, it's a very, very small amount. Let's just see what happens. 0.01. Rotate and translate. There we go. Look, making progress. And these are all way down there. Now, so you guys did not have to play around with trying to find the right numbers. These are the numbers I decided on. I'm going to move it out 0.025 with a 15 rotation amount, and that's what it's going to look like. I think that's what we're going to do. And let's delete these. Now let's make it so that these are childed, that way they're not floating around the screen. Just like that. And let's also create a list. That way we can just easily delete those when we're experimenting. Private list, game object, duplicated objects, equal new. And down here, we're going to add that new game object, not quite. Duplicated objects.add new game object. Now we're going to also add a button, public void delete. And we're going to go for all of those objects, duplicated objects. And this is going to be called just obj if obj does not equal null. Well, it's being rude. Destroy immediate. Obj. Oh, look at those parentheses right there. Killing me. And then duplicated objects, not clear. Delete. No. Button. And delete. Sweet. So now we can prototype and experiment and easily delete them. And this script can just go in your pocket for future uses. And we're going to actually create those and leave them there. But now we also need to add some materials. We want 2 different materials, one for when we have stamina and one for when we don't. So these scripts, let's say m_ climbing has stamina. Duplicated, climbing has no stamina. We'll take this and we are going to make these transparent and a nice little transparency. Make them, I'm going to make mine blue, and then my no stamina I'm going to make red. Now let's see what these look like. Has stamina, Let's see where the front is. We'll say these ones have no stamina. And that's what it would look like. And of course, we can make them not so transparent. Of course, I messed that up. So it does not like that. What about that? 170? No, look. 182. Then let's fix the emission. Let's just make it red. The same word as this. Copy, paste, and I think we're going to actually reduce. That seemed a little bright. And that's fine for now. So that's basically something of what it's going to look like. It's going to go blue and then red when it's out of stamina. And now that is over, we can get rid of the script and position this where we would like it to be. So we just need to rotate this actually. And that should be fine. Let's click play and then just position this game object. That actually looks pretty perfect. Yeah, I think that's good. Now let's give this some functionality. So if we open up the climbing stamina view, we're going to need two things first. Serialize field. And the first thing is a list of all of those cubes. Each element of our stamina. And we have 10 of them, but that's completely irrelevant. The script will do the math for us. Mesh renderer, make it a list, meshes. The next thing we need to do is we need to have both of these materials so we can assign the color value for when we either have stamina or don't. Material, no stamina, has stamina. And we also want this to be, pretty. So let's actually add a float animation time. Let's guess 0.1f. And that animation time is going to be when it, I think, turns on and turns off. I want this to fade in and fade out. And let's not also forget our climbing stamina controller. We'll make that the very first variable. And if you wanted to, you could do require components, but I absolutely hate and despise require components when you're trying to delete things. Private awake climbing stamina controller equals try get component out stamina controller. And we'll do if not climbing stamina controller. And sometimes we like to be complete noobs. Delete that. Alrighty, and now we're going to actually throw on unvalidate. Unvalidate. Call unvalidate. Now we need to subscribe to the two methods that we created here. Climbing stamina controller.grab started. .add listener. Grab started. And grab ended. And let's just create those. Alrighty. So now we need to set the color of the stamina blocks. Let's make that first, because that's pretty much the most important method here, is private void set stamina color block. And to do this, let's say we need the current stamina and float max stamina. So how are we going to set these stamina blocks? We got 10 blocks here, and I believe we have 100 stamina. So basically, we need to decide how much stamina each block has, and that's pretty simple math for that. is 100 divided by 10, and that's how much stamina each block represents, is 10 stamina. So let's see, what do we want to call this variable? Var stamina per block. It's going to be max stamina divided by meshes dot count length. You can never remember. So now that we have the amount of stamina per block, we just need to figure out which blocks have stamina and which don't and assign the proper color. So we're going to for loop through all of the meshes. For meshes dot length. And then we'll have, right, so we are on, let's say we're on the first block. So we're going to have a bool called that has stamina. Does the current block have stamina? And that's going to equal our current stamina if the current stamina is greater than the block count times stamina per block. So now we're going to go through each of the blocks. If we're on block 0 or block 1, and we're going to say I times stamina per block, do we have more than 10 stamina? Yes. Then it's blue. Yes, 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 yes. And if we only have 90 stamina, the last block, we're going to say current stamina is 90, which is greater than I times stamina times block, meaning the one block won't have stamina. I think I said that backwards, but I think I got the point across. So from here, let's do if has stamina. We are going to take the current block, meshes, I, and since we are on the mesh renderer already, we just need to do material equals has stamina. We need to set this to has stamina, but I call these the exact same thing, so let's just go ahead and add that to this. Make it clear. If we want to make it really clear, we can do that. That we are talking about the materials, which is probably what my old project lead would make me do. It has no stamina, then pretty much the same thing, except for we're making it red. No stamina. All right. Now, how do we test this? How do we test this? We can make a, right, so we're using naughty attributes, public void test. Button, oops. And we'll do set stamina color block, current stamina, 50, 100. Then let's do another one of these. And let's pray that it works. All right, let's assign the materials. No stamina, has stamina. And, we got to assign the meshes. We'll lock this, grab all these, and drag them in. And click test. Seems to be working. Now let's actually animate these objects so they show up in a nice and pretty way. By numerator. And what are we going to call this? Private display blocks. And we'll have float animation time and a bool to show or hide it. Show. All right, so now from here, we're going to want to iterate through all of these blocks one by one, and if it's not enabled, enable it. And vice versa, if we're disabling it, we're going to go through the whole list and disable them one by one with the animation time. That way it's a nice, beautiful transition between them all. For each, what did I call them? Meshes? Meshes. And we'll call this mesh. Right, so if mesh dot active transform dot active in the game object, mesh.gameObject.active in hierarchy. If that equals show, if it is active and we want to show it, we're going to skip it and go to the next block. That way we don't have to wait for the animation to go halfway through if it's already halfway turned on. Then we're going to do mesh.gameObject.setActive show. And then we are going to yield, return new wait 4 seconds, animation time. Done. Just like that. And we're actually going to get rid of these and just actually call the display blocks. So when we grab onto something, we are going to want to display the blocks. And when we let go, we're going to hide the blocks. Now we are going to get rid of these and call a method called toggle display. Toggle display, is that the right one if I want to write true? Probably not. It should be called set display active true. And we need to do this from a wonderful lambda expression. And then this one will be false. Let's make this. And this is basically just to call our enumerator down here. And if for some reason the player was grabbing and letting go, grabbing and letting go, we need to stop this. And since we are only going to do one coroutine, we'll just do stop all coroutines, start a new coroutine, display blocks. And animation time, P0. What a beautiful name for that variable, P0. State. Oops. All right. I think that is it. Almost. Let's keep this nice and simple. You could definitely do something a little fancier of how we are going to set the stamina color blocks. But since we're keeping this simple, we're just going to have this running in an update loop. And we will do set stamina blocks. And we need our reference stamina current stamina, which must be private. Climbing stamina controller dot max stamina. Let's go find out. Let's go ahead and create a getter for this. What happened? Encapsulate field, do a write, and we'll do the same thing for max or current stamina. Where's current stamina? Current stamina. And read usage. There we are. I feel like those should be capitalized. I want them to be capitalized. And that's it. It should work. We're going to alt enter this and convert this in a single line. Up to you if you want to do that. And this, I think, is easier to read, especially for new developers. But if you like things to be fancy, you could do this. And I think this script is all done and all cleaned up. Probably won't work till we test it out. I think we're actually forgetting one more thing, though, is these meshes are on at the start. We need to disable them for each mesh. GameObject.setActive false. And for this, we'll leave a comment. Disable meshes at the start. Now, let's see if it works. I do realize we only have it on one wrist. click Y, and now clicking G, look at the wrist, the stamina showing up, and going down. And I'm in debug mode so I can see my current stamina. Looks like it's working perfectly. And as we get down to 0, our player should fall, even though he's not climbing, and then it disappears. Perfect. Now let's test grabbing and releasing that. Seems to be working. It's up to you if you think that is a feature or a bug. I think it's kind of cool, except for I'm going to make the time much faster, and that'll kind of alleviate that. Let's see, get this guy in place. There we go. See, that's much better. All right. Now let's decide, is this script done? I think so. I think I don't like this, though. There's really no point in this. I'll get rid of the animation time. And I originally had the animation time there because maybe displaying and showing it, wanted it at different speeds, but I don't think so. This, I like onValidate to be right under awake because it's the first method that's ever called. And I think that's it. I think we're good to go. Besides adding it to the other wrist. And to add it to the other wrist, we're going to duplicate this. Drop it over there. And let's see if these match up. Paste that. And of course they're invisible. And of course I probably already deleted the wonderful event to make them appear. But through the magic of the inspector, that looks good. So we can probably just leave the transform exactly the same and just set this guy up. So we'll do the same thing, duplicate that, drop it onto the left controller, paste in our transform, and lock this guy, open this up, drop these in there, and assign our materials. No stamina. Those are backwards. All right, let's rename this. Climbing, no stamina. Boom. All done. And in the next video, we are going to be adding a zip line or something more like a grappling hook that brings you up high, and a utility scripts to clean up and smooth out some of these features that we've created and added. And I'll see you guys next time.